So, I've always wanted to become a VTuber and see what it's like being an anime girl on the internet. However, VTubers cost a down payment on a house to commission from an artist, with the most expensive ones being $15,000 for a complete professional rig. Now, obviously, being a broke 18-year-old, flipping burgers at McDonald's isn't going to make me nearly enough money to afford one. So instead, I'm just going to learn to draw one myself, as I am an artist and have decent enough skills that I think I can make something decent looking. Though, having only ever drawn still pieces, making a fully animated VTuber is going to be very hard. It's going to take a long time to do, but if I want to be a VTuber, I'm gonna have to learn how to do it anyway. The first step in making my VTuber is the design. Here is where you throw all your ideas against the wall and see what would be the best for your needs. When designing my model, I needed to first decide on what the theme of the model was going to be. For most VTubers, or any art to be honest, a theme or idea is generally behind the artwork. This theme can be as simple as a single idea or as complicated as a chemical name. I have seen multiple themes throughout the VTubing scene, with many VTubers just being their OCs or portraying a character. The second part of the design was the color scheme chosen for my VTuber model. I don't think this step is as important as the theme of the VTuber, though it does give my model more consistency and makes it stand out more. The main color schemes are monochromatic, analogous, and complementary, which all have their own benefits and disadvantages. There are a lot more ways to design a VTuber, but I can't explain it now. So if you want to go looking, there are plenty of other places to learn how to design a VTuber. I found Squeegee's videos to be the most helpful, with her in-depth long videos on very specific VTuber designs. For my model, I went for a synthwave theme, as it fits with my old OC and has the same color scheme. It also just is my favorite art style. Now, my character has two characters in it, the main girl and the duck, which is meant to be me. So I decided to combine them both into one big VTuber, similar to Vidal and Neuro. By splitting up the model into two parts, it allows me to use one of the models as the actual model, where the other one can be used for text-to-speech. The design process isn't really the hardest thing to do. I had already designed the OC beforehand. I just touched it up with some more design elements for the actual model. After finishing the design, it was time to draw the VTuber. In order to draw my VTuber, I had to use a software that could export Photoshop files. The best art software, and the one I used, is Clip Studio Paint, though there are many other options such as GIMP, Procreate, and of course, Photoshop. I could have made a 3D VTuber, which gives me much more expressive facial tracking, though it is a lot harder to do and requires an entirely different animation software to set up, such as Blender. And frankly, my potato Dell 2018 laptop could not handle that kind of stuff. I also had to decide if I wanted a full body model or a half body. The full body model has the entire body drawn out, whereas the half body has generally only the waist up drawn. I went with a half body model, as nobody is going to see below the waist anyway. Now, when drawing the model, I had to cut the model up into a bunch of smaller pieces and separate them into different layers. You can do this while drawing, or when the model is completely finished. This is done to allow for the animation program to make my model move and have limbs move independently from one another, as having my eyes glued to my face isn't going to sell the illusion of a moving head. Also, the more you cut your model, the more movement you will get in the final result, though this also makes the animation step much harder and longer to do, as there are more individual parts that need to be animated. Here's a tip I found while drawing. Don't worry if you don't cut it up enough, as I didn't and had to fix it multiple times. When this happened, I just made another Photoshop file with the fix and copied it over into the actual model. I also found that I had to draw a lot of parts that aren't normally seen when the model isn't moving, mainly the inside of the mouth, the back of the head, and the inside of your clothes. If you don't draw these, the model will be heavily restricted in its movement, and adding them gives it a more 3D look to it. When I finally finished the final model, I had to make sure that all the layers for a single part were combined, as clipping them on in Live 2D is quite a cumbersome task. Although, if you have a clipping layer that clips onto multiple things, such as the blush on the face, save it as a clipping mask. Doing this will prevent problems with the layers not lining up in the animation. Once I was satisfied with the final result of the model, it was on to the rigging. The rigging / animation process of making a VTuber was the longest part by far, and it took a long time in order to get it done. The main software used in rigging a VTuber is Live 2D, as it allows for a wide range of animation styles. Live 2D Cubism has a paid and free version. If you are just making a VTuber once for yourself, get the free 42-day trial, as it allows you to use all the tools that Live 2D has, and the free version has some limiting features. Also, there were no need for a credit card for the free trial. I could just download it and be done. There were other rigging softwares available, though they don't have nearly as much information and tutorials as Live 2D. When I had my VTuber model in Live 2D, I had to first apply a mesh to the model. This mesh is used to tell the program how an object can be deformed. The mesh is made up of multiple little points that are all connected to each other. If a point moves, it moves all the drawing inside of the section of the mesh. I could manually make the mesh, which gives me much more control over how the model moves and looks, though for the most situations, the auto mesher did a fine enough job. You can apply a mesh to every single part of the model before you start animating if you want, though I did them one at a time as I made my way through the model. Once I meshed the layers, it was time to animate them. The way in which Live 2D animates is with keyframes. When an object moves, it is just moving to the other preset keyframe, with all the animation in between the keyframes being generated by Live 2D, as animating every single frame of movement is way too hard to do. Though I have seen some talented people be able to do that with stop motion claymation VTubers. There are mainly 2 keyframes used for most objects, though some parts, mainly the mouth, have a lot more keyframes. The keyframes sat on lines called parameters, which is what the face tracking software uses to animate the model. Most parameters are set between -1 to +1, though for more animated parts, they're generally set from -30 to +30. The parameters, though, only animate on one axis, meaning I had to animate the X and Y axes separately, though they can be combined into one big parameter, which allows for easier animation for the corners of objects. When making my model, I set the head movement parameters on both the duck and the girl, which means they will both move with my head, though the mouth movements are put onto different parameters in order to allow us to talk independently from one another. Now, there are a lot of different ways in which I could animate the different parts between the keyframes. The 4 main ones were warp deformers, path deformers, mesh deformers, and rotation deformers. The warp deformer deformed the whole mesh, acting as if it was the side of one big cube. This was useful for large movements, mainly the head. This deformer can also be placed on multiple objects, acting as a file of some kind, though the deformer does not change the viewing layers. If you are using the free version, just be careful of how many deformers you use, as you are limited to only 50. Rotation deformers act very similarly to warp deformers, but they change the model in the Z-axis, while warp deformers change the model in the X and Y axes. Path deformers create a path along the whole mesh. When one of the parts moves, it drags the whole mesh along with it, with the parts getting closer to the path being deformed the most. This was mainly used on objects that are long and thin, such as the eyelashes. And finally, there are mesh deformers. These directly change the mesh of the model, which was really helpful for fixing mistakes or improving slight areas. As a general rule, I worked outwards from the center of the model. So for the face of the model, I first animated the movement of the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows, then animated the head movement, followed by the hair movement. If it lies underneath another object, it should be done first. This also allows for a greater illusion that the model is actually 3D. There are more complex techniques I could use to sell the illusion, such as reverse clipping, but for me, my model's movements are good enough. After animating the model, it was time to apply the physics. These make the models feel more alive and interesting to look at, such as wavy bouncy hair. I went for eye jiggle, the hair bounce, and shirt movement. The physics were separated into 3 sections: input, output, and physics. The input is what parameter is moving in the tracking software. So for my eyes, it was the opening and closing of the eyelid. As they opened and closed, they translated into the output given by the pendulum in the physics settings. The faster they opened and closed, the more erratic the pendulum became. So as the eyes open and close, the irises jiggle more and more. You can also have a pendulum whose input is the angle of the object, with this used in things that need to stay where they are, such as the hair. The physics tab is also where you can test out the movement of your model without having to move it to a different program. After the Vtuber model is fully rigged, it's time to export it to a face tracking software. There are a lot more options when it comes to face tracking softwares for VTubers. The main one used is VTube Studio, as it is available on both mobile and computer and can be used for completely free. There are other ones such as VNyan and VC Face. Since you have to pay to use the mobile app, and since my computer has no webcam, I just hooked up my phone with the computer through the Camo app. You will get a little moving watermark in the free version of VTube Studio, though it can be completely cropped out of the video. So after spending a total of 180 hours of constant work on this model, this is the result. It is not the best VTuber model I've ever seen, and there are some things that could be changed, but for a first attempt, this is probably the best thing I could ever do. So I just want to use the VTuber to stream general stuff, mainly my art and other games that I like to play, though this was more done as an experiment to test my skills. This was a really fun experience to try and see what it is like to make a VTuber model, and after spending that much time, you can really see the amount of effort it takes to make one of these. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video, because it definitely took me way too long to do, and I'll see if I can make any new videos in the future.